Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. For today's episode, we are joined by Santa Claus, who is running for Congress up in the state of Alaska. Santa, thank you for coming on the podcast today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you. It's getting
Yeah.
nice and warm up here for a change.
Oh, really? For Alaska?
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about your campaign and what you're running for. Just before we kind of I just want to get the elephant out of the room a little bit here. Your legal name is Santa Claus, correct?
Has been since 2005.
Okay, so just because I know that some people probably ask that question, like, is his name really Santa Claus? Yes, it's so much as let's kind of get into why you're here, though. You are running for Congress up in the state of Alaska. Alaska only has one seat at the moment, so it's your at-large bid. Why are you running for Congress? And I guess more specifically, why this cycle?
Well, it's kind of an unusual time. Our congressman who'd been in office for 49 years passed away, and it was kind of all of a sudden. So people up here are scrambling to fill his seat and get ready for the next 2-year terms election that's coming up. So I figured I would like to represent Alaskans, and I think the best way I can do it is to fill the remainder of Don's term, which ends the first week in January, and let the other candidates do their fundraising, campaigning, and all of their stuff for that term while I'm serving the end of Don's term.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. And another thing I want to know about your campaign really quickly here is, from my understanding, you're not taking any donations whatsoever. Can you just that is mostly unheard of as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've heard of people not taking corporate PAC money, but this is not taking even small dollar donations. I've never heard of that before. What was the motivation behind basically deciding not to take any donations at all?
Well, because of the timing, partly, since this is ranked choice voting in this particular election, a lot of people aren't familiar with it, but one of the quotes that I used to publish is ranked choice voting reduces partisanship, encourages more candidates to run, boosts voter turnout, takes power away from the special interests and out-of-state influence, and makes it almost impossible for anyone to rig an election. So the part that you just asked me about is takes power away from special interests and out-of-state influence. I'm not raising money partly because I don't want to do all the extra FEC compliance, the Federal Election Commission compliance, which is very onerous and time and energy consuming. And for a 4-month term in office, I'd rather just get the word out of what I'm for or what I'm against as far as legislation goes. But I just don't really want to be bothered with the fundraising part. I think it's, why should voters have to pay somebody to be able to go in the news media and promote their particular platform? People should be able to do that themselves. If a candidate's message resonates with them, and of course I have an advantage of having name recognition, so do a few other candidates, but if my message resonates with someone, why can't that prospective voter go out, and if they want to make a homemade sign, a little creative sign, put up in their window or put up on their lawn, or canvas with friends, or phone bank with friends, or just do stuff on their own schedule with people that they like, for somebody who they would like to support and vote for. I'd much rather see that be the standard instead of the entire party system, or different kinds of coalitions, sorts of things. And getting back to the PAC thing that you mentioned, if I'm not, just like with a PAC can go out and, my supporters could go out and just organize a PAC themselves. And as long as I'm not directing or coordinating with them what they decide to do to support my campaign, that's great, because I'm not accepting, the campaign, donation. And also, I haven't been actively seeking endorsements, although I had one unsolicited endorsement from Blue PAC, Blue America. So I'm happy about that, but it wasn't something I went out to do. It was just very kind of them to do it. And I'm not coordinating anything with them or, directing them or controlling them in any way. So I just want to keep the money out of politics as much as possible. We've seen the influence for many years. I'll be 75 in a couple of weeks, and that hasn't changed during my lifetime. And
Right.
one of the worst, the only change, I guess, has been that Citizens United decision, and that change brought in a lot of unnecessary corporate influence, which
Yeah.
I'm not really for. So that's why I'm not soliciting or accepting any campaign contributions, period. And that includes, volunteers, it includes materials, it includes everything, just absolutely nothing. But as I said before, I would be thrilled if people, without telling me what they're doing until they've done it, go out and do, some really nice stuff for my campaign. That'd be very helpful. It'd be great for me and great for them because they actually have control over it. It's not a party telling them what to do. It's not somebody putting them under their thumb saying, oh, you better do this, you can lose your job type of situation. This is just people who would like to, or just good-hearted people who would like to do something positive for my campaign.
Right. And, speaking of, things that you believe in, like what your campaign stands for, the first thing that I saw about you when I first like looked you up was, you holding a sign that said Medicare for All. So I definitely want to ask you about that because I feel as though we're seeing more and more people move away from that, especially, well, I mean, it was only ever popular on the left, and we're seeing more and more people on the left move away from it. Our country just, experienced the effects of COVID. People are now talking about, just how vulnerable that left the hospital system. Why do you support universal health care, and would you openly advocate for it if you were in the House?
Yes, and yes. I support it because having just what you said, having seen the devastating effects of COVID, among other, diseases and whatever through the years, and just people getting injured and sick and whatever. I'm getting older now, so I deal with medical issues as well. And I qualified for Medicare when I was 65, and that was a while back. So I'm happy I have it. It pays usually about 80% of my medical bills. So I think with some of the surprise billing people have been experiencing, all that goes away if you have Medicare for All. Um, in my particular position now as a legislator elsewhere, um, when we had a presentation by health consultants, insurance consultants, what should the city do with this, that, or the other thing as far as its health coverage goes. After their hour-long presentation, I said, well, what happens if we had Medicare for All? And they, to their credit, looked up and said, well, you won't need us. And with insurance companies, that almost takes them pretty much out of the picture. And just as an aside to that, to make it more palatable for insurance companies, I was thinking about the Second Amendment stuff with the guns and things. Instead of having the federal government control gun registration and all that, why not have the states do it as they do with vehicles, insure the gun and insure the owner? And people are going to safeguard those weapons a lot better if they know they're going to get dunned for it. And if they can't get insurance to own a weapon, that's on the insurance company, not the state, not the federal government. So anyway, that's just a little plum for the insurance industry should the healthcare part of it disappear for them.
Right.
So I would just like to see us out of that entire, us people be out of that entire system. We've had Medicare for more than half a century. It's worked pretty well. We've had Social Security, we've had the VA medical system. There are problems with it, but we know what they are, and they're not that hard to fix, in my opinion. So I'm all for Medicare for All. It takes a lot of stress out. A lot of people get sick from stress, and a lot
That's
of people
true.
are stressing over medical bills. And are they going to be able to afford this particular medicine? Or are they going to be afford to have their skin checked for what might be skin cancer? Are they going to be able to afford a visit here, a visit there for some medical concern that they have? And with Medicare for All, that is not a big big deal. So instead of hitting society with Medicare for All overnight, I would be all for continuing to lower the age to qualify for Medicare, slowly but surely, and expand the coverage. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it would be very good for our country and take a lot of the stress away, take a lot of surprise billing. And one thing I would like to see is the contribution cap on Social Security contributions removed.
Mm.
That would fund Social Security for a very, very long time. And with Medicare for All, instead of people paying insurance premiums like they have, these sometimes they're outrageous to insurance companies, you just pay, it's almost like a stipend, and very, very, very low cost, plus whatever percentage isn't covered by it.
Well, I definitely appreciate your thoughts on that. In my personal opinion, I think we need universal health care. So it's nice to hear that there's other people out there who are willing to fight for it. One of the other things that has caught my attention recently has been the unionization efforts across the country, most notably with Amazon, Starbucks. You had mentioned to me that you are a lifelong union member. Can you just speak to me directly? What is it about unionization that you personally believe in? And do you think that we need to shore up the NLRB on the federal level?
We do need to shore up the National Labor Relations Board. I'm all for unions. Most people don't realize, if they're not union members, I've been a union member for 51 years and happy to say that. We have, not every worker, it depends on shifts and stuff like that, but most people have weekends, whether they fall on Saturday and Sunday or else, another time during the week, but weekends off, workday breaks, paid vacation, family medical leave, sick leave, Social Security, minimum wage, 8-hour workday, overtime pay, child labor laws. That's all because of unions. And some of those laws and acts were passed after people died fighting for them. These just weren't easily won battles. Big companies really don't want to pay for a lot of this stuff. And in the olden days, people had to physically fight for them, and they did. And now we have these benefits, particularly for union members. And I must say, they're a very small number, but a good number of companies that do provide really good benefits and treat their employees well. I don't want to forget about those few companies that do that. But for the most part, it's a fight, for the working class to get a decent wage, get benefits. We were talking about it before with the Medicare or universal healthcare, and just good working conditions. So it's not just the NLRB with the unions, but it's also things like OSHA and ADA. Like we saw this with COVID. If you were a business owner and you felt that your employees should be wearing masks, to be protected, and somebody came into your place of business, you could still trespass them if they were being abusive to your staff, because the customer was not going to wear a mask, et cetera. If OSHA had stepped up and said, well, here's what we consider to be a safe workspace, if an employer decides they want to be masked or unmasked, either way, they have the right to do that and keep customers out who will not comply as a matter of law. That's what they should have done, in my opinion. Not, again, as a ruling, not just a recommendation. Recommendations are BS, in my opinion. It's absolutely useless, particularly with this most recent experience of COVID stuff. So unions tend to protect their workers, and they've been good to me through the years. I haven't worked that much in the union because I haven't gone out to work that much in the union, but I've kept paying my dues because I think it's the right thing to do. That's the way I indirectly or directly support unions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That is something that I'm seeing across the country right now is like people are finally kind of like banding together, no longer waiting for legislation to come down to protect them, but kind of banding together to more or less protect themselves, something that I very much support. We're going to take a quick break in this episode, but when we come back, we're going to have more questions with Santa Claus. Make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back from the break, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us through this episode of Independent Thought. Santa, it would probably be really terrible of me to get through this interview and not ask you about the news of the week. Obviously, there was a leaked document out of the Supreme Courts about the fact that they were planning on overturning Roe v. Wade. It has been the entire talk of the country for the last week. And so, I think it's just important to ask anyone who's running for public office how they feel about this issue. So now I'm going to bring this to you. What are your thoughts on Roe v. Wade potentially being overturned? Like, where do you stand on this issue?
Well, that 1973 decision, so it's almost half a century, has been protecting women's health, in my view. And because I'm going to kind of couch it this way, a lot of people are saying, well, we're pro-life or we're pro-choice. They have these two sort of sides to it. And the pro-life, it's kind of hard to understand their perspective. They seem more like pro-birth, not pro-life, because the minute the little one is born, see ya, we're not going to protect you. That's what I hear from the pro-life people. It just doesn't make sense. We have wars going on where people are getting killed, we have people dying from drugs, we have people on death row, we have all these things that are causing people to die, COVID. Where's the outrage on all that? If you're really pro-life, what's up? Why aren't you pro-life? And then for women's choice, pro-choice, they're protecting their body. I don't have a uterus, so I'm not worried about that aspect of it for me personally, but I am for the women I know and my family and friends and all the other women I don't know. Why should somebody be telling them what they can and can't do with their own body? It seems to me, I'm a monk, so I believe in a creator, I believe in God myself. That's a conversation a particular woman who becomes pregnant has, I think, with whoever they think of as their creator, if anyone, and with their physician, if they have a physician and can afford a physician, and perhaps with their partner or family, if that comes into play. And to have somebody come from outside, that'd be kind of like me saying, well, for men, if we're doing that to women, imposing this, a change in the Roe v. Wade, then that would be like saying, well, for men, we're the ones who impregnate women. So let's have all men, even boys, have a vasectomy. And then when they're responsible enough to help take care of a child and do all that stuff, then maybe reverse the vasectomy and just get rid of the entire abortion problem to begin with. You know what I mean?
You know what? I mean, it's a very fair thing. We don't really see a whole lot of laws in this country regulating men's bodies. So, it's a pretty fair comparison to make. And so I do appreciate your thoughts on that. The one thing that I want to, kind of do now, I want to transition away from that topic because I think that conversation is going to be ongoing for months on end now. So we'll have plenty of chances to revisit that on this podcast, particularly for you running for Congress in the state of Alaska. We have yet to specifically say what it is you want to do for the people of Alaska. Obviously, you're running for a federal seat, but you also want to take care of the people back at home. What is it? What is the first issue that pops up for you that you think of as is relative to the people of Alaska that you want to try to address if you get elected?
Defense, infrastructure, climate change. All those have an impact on every single Alaskan up here. Defense, obviously, because we're 50 miles away from Russia and with things heating up with regard to potential war. We have a spectacular defense array up here, the Defense Department, not the War Department. And we're pretty well poised to help defend the United States should things escalate. So I think they need all the support they can get, and they're lacking in a few areas. So I would try and get legislation, whether it's military suicides or, just on the ground stuff or equipment or training, that sort of stuff. I'm all for supporting that. With respect to infrastructure, which also has an impact on the military, things like expanding broadband access and actual not just the access itself, but broadband itself, which helps with education and the military and just, people at home trying to, access it, businesses, et cetera. With the climate change, permafrost is going to be an issue because as that disappears, that's going to have an impact on pandemics and some other unanticipated, things that I think we're going to have to deal with, whether it has to do with subsistence, for people who are out there hunting and fishing. That's how they feed themselves, or agriculture, or water, clean water. We have PFAS and PFOA, water contamination up here, pollution, and some other issues that I think can be partly addressed at the federal level. I'm all for things like protecting the Arctic, refuge, and I'm for protecting Bristol Bay, the salmon fishery that's being, I would say, threatened by a mine that a company wants to build next to it, and I'm just worried about the potential for pollution and killing off the fish. So,
Okay.
things like that, and we have the normal stuff like eradicating homelessness, preventing and treating drug addiction, providing the best public safety services possible, restoring the child tax credit. That's a big one. Protecting the woman's right to choose, which we talked about a moment ago. LGBTQ plus issues, which are pretty important. I have a lot of friends who fall into that, and train rail service between Alaska and Alberta, Canada, to help connect us with the lower 48, and protecting First Peoples sovereignty. That's a big deal up here. So I would help with some of that, particularly the federal level. For university and trades, for education, if I were to address student loan things, I would apply a means test and put a cap on the amount of interest that's being paid to whoever the lender or lenders happen to be. I'm against energy subsidies for like oil and gas companies and mining companies. Most of them are laughing all the way to the bank. They're doing buybacks, executive outrageous compensation packages and stuff, but they want to charge more, particularly during this, now that we have this period of the war that everybody's, has impacts on even that field.
I want to ask you about that really quickly here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's a question that I think is not just for Alaska, but for the whole country right now. When we're talking about what in my mind is corporate greed, when it comes to right now with inflation, particularly on the federal level, like, is there something that can be done to address, inflation right now in this country, and what does that look like?
Well, you can do it with a carrot or a stick or both. It seems to me, and I've thought a little bit about this, and I'm still doing some more research on it. And it goes back to the union stuff as well. When I see big companies that aren't paying taxes, at least their fair share of taxes, and I see executive compensation the way it is in some cases, I think of a company, any company, if their ownership, however it's structured, if those people are making more than 100 times the salary of the lowest paid employee, they ought to be taxed at an extraordinarily high rate.
Okay. Hey, you know what? You're not going to get any kind of pushback from me on that particular issue. Santa, I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast today and talking to us about, a variety of different issues, why you're running for Alaska, what you want to do for people of the state, your broad thoughts on different ideas across the country right now. As a final like pitch, why is it that the people of Alaska should vote for you and not like another person on the ballot who might also have some name recognition, like a Sarah Palin, for instance?
Well, you've heard most of my platform just when I was reeling off stuff before. I think they should vote for me for a few reasons. One is I would be almost like a caretaker for a few months, go in, do a few little things, wind up some stuff that Don Young was working on, having to do with the Congressional Cannabis Caucus and fisheries, things like that, and rail, and do a few things that the sitting senators for Alaska are interested in. One of them's interested in military stuff, so addressing things like military suicides and sexual assaults, stuff like that, and housing for military and benefits. And also the other senators are interested now in addressing some of the challenges faced with the aging population. And that's sort of taking care of the existing thing for our state in Congress. But the stuff I would bring to it is what I had mentioned before, if given the opportunity. So mine would be kind of a caretaker thing, as I was saying, because my being in office for that short period of time would allow other candidates who are interested themselves in fundraising and campaigning the time without distraction, without being in office, trying to work for voters in Alaska and all Alaskans to run their campaigns, without distraction. For me, I would just put my nose to the grindstone, do the 4 months, have sort of a clean slate for whoever comes in, saying, here's what we did, run with it or change it. So that's why I'm doing it, because we were kind of caught off guard with Don Young's passing, and everybody's been kind of scrambling. So I figure, well, this gives everybody kind of a breather. I'm not in it for a career. I'm not in it for the money. As you mentioned before, I'm not, soliciting or accepting any fundraising. I'm not going to be, pushed around by a corporation or a PAC or anybody else, for their agenda. Everybody knows what my platform agenda is. And if they don't, and if they can't find enough of it on my website, just go to berniesanders.com/issues and you'll find the rest of it there. So I'm pretty much an open book with respect to that. So that's why I think voters should vote for me. And especially since I was talking about things like the military and infrastructure and everything from fisheries to you name it up here. So I'm well aware of some of the Alaska issues. I'm well aware of some of the national issues. I've had a lot of experience before my Santa years in office. A lot of people think, oh, that's just a jolly old guy, Santa Claus. How come he's running for office? Who cares? Well, should I list off just a few of the things from before the Santa years, why people should be voting for me?
Sure.
All right. I'm a former special assistant to the Deputy Police Commissioner of New York City. I'm former member of the Federal Emergency Management Agency's National Defense Executive Reserve while I was director of the Terrorism Research and Mediation Center. As former Chief of Safety and Security, U.S. Virgin Islands Port Authority, I have my master's and bachelor's degrees from New York University, where I finished all the coursework for a doctorate in educational communication and technology. And I'm a sitting councilman up here. I was reelected as a little blue dot in a red state up here because people seemed to like my platform, and was a member of the Alaska Public Broadcasting Commission, having run a couple of radio TV stations in my past. And I'm also a monk. So I believe that love is the greatest gift, not the crass commercial secular spectacle that many people associate with Christmas these days in many parts of the world, including the United States. And it's a little bit different. So I'm hoping, and I think people should vote for me just because I do a really good thing for Alaska and send a message that, no, you don't need all this money to get into politics. Set a better example for children. And the timing is really good, because if I do get elected, just going back to the Santa part of it, children are going to see Santa Claus in Congress during the time they usually think about Santa Claus. So that's a little kind of extra bonus from the way I look at it. So I'm hopeful that enough people in Alaska will see what I'm meaning to do. It's not for me, it's for them and for the state of Alaska. And it comes from my heart, not a pocketbook. So thank you.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Where can people learn more about your campaign online, and has voting already begun in Alaska?
Voting has begun already. It started last week. It's all by mail. And the last day anybody can vote by mail is June 11th. And if people would like some more information, they can find it on SantaClausForAlaska.com, my website, and on Twitter as Santa Claus for AK, the abbreviation for Alaska. And there's plenty of information there. And I'm happy to answer questions. I'm glad you asked some really good ones, Desmond. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I also appreciate that you have a bit of a sense of humor about some of this stuff, because after a while, everything from podcasting to politics to whatever takes a toll. So I'm glad you're able to keep a good heart and a good sense of humor.
Hey, I thank you. I do appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on today and telling everyone about your campaign and why you're running. Thank you for giving us some time today. And to all the viewers out there, thank you for watching this episode. We will see you in the next one. Make sure to subscribe if you like this episode.